All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome in. Betsperts Golf here for our first look at the 2024 PGA Cup. Byron Nelson, new sponsor, same very, very, very vanilla soft serve this week, Ron. We are back to individual play after team events. And again, like I talked about last week, I think the Zurich is a better watch than it is maybe a DFS or betting event. We are back to stroke play, but we are dealing with probably the most basic layout that we get here on the PGA Tour. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, yeah. Interesting week last week. Rory and Shane kind of overcoming all these kind of no-name teams. And so, yeah, a little bit of drama, I guess you could say, yesterday. And I do like the team event. And if they could somehow maybe combine that with match play, since they took away the match play from us, which I really loved, kind of that NCAA tournament bracket style, just give us something like that. I think that's definitely needed. But yeah, TPC Craig Ranch, the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson, kind of, I guess, slowly building here back up towards the second major PGA championship. So kind of a weak field. Jordan Spieth, the only top 20 player here. You do have a little bit of more depth behind him with a lot of Texas guys, Will Zalatoris, and then obviously Jason Day, who won last year. And, KH Lee won here back-to-back years, the first 2 years. So, TPC Lee is back again. So, yeah, it's an interesting board for sure.
Yeah, interesting week. We want to give folks a chance to check us out this week. It is free week at Betsperts Golf. Super excited about it. You do need to sign up. So you will need to go and create an account. Use the promo code FREEWEEK. That's it, before the tournament starts. So you can do that Thursday morning super early if you want to get access to all that we're doing this week. You want to get in and build a model for Byron Nelson. You want to get access to Ron's articles, stuff that we write. There's the rabbit hole as we're going to walk through here. You get it all this week. So take advantage of this. Use the promo code FREEWEEK when you sign up. It is a full rolling week, so a week from whenever you sign up to get you in there. Check it out. We got another major coming up here soon. You're going to want to get access to all that we're doing here. Build your own models, get access to our models, all the written content. Get in the Discord. Great community. Get the picks. Get in there as well. Check that out. Just head over to betspertsgolf.com. Use that promo code FREEWEEK and get yourself in there and get started. So any questions, hit us up on Twitter. DM us at Betsperts Golf, Ron Kloss, PGA Splits 101. You can hit me up as well at Ryan Noonan. We want to make sure you have just a good experience in your first time coming over and checking stuff out. We're going to walk through some of the rabbit hole stuff that you can do with the site, some very unique abilities to slice and dice this data that we have access to through the PGA. Just be able to find who we need to go at this week because it is again, just from a core standpoint, Ron, if you want to talk about, they changed the last year to a par 71. We took down one of the par fives and we still had super easy scoring. We're going to get into the mid 20s here for sure if the weather holds.
Yeah. So yeah, last year they took it down, like you said, trying to make it tougher. The rough, the first couple of years was only like 1.5 inches and obviously super easy. And they bumped that up last year to 2.75 and it's Bermuda. So you'd think it would be tricky, but last year, it was very dry and the rough just did not come in like they wanted it to. And so it never got as penal as they thought. Now, this year in Texas, they've had so much rain. So the rough is expected to be more troublesome. But at this course, that kind of just all remains to be seen because it is the fourth easiest course on tour. It's like averaging 2.4 strokes under par per round. Even last year with them dropping it to a par 71, still played, top, I think it was still the second easiest on tour. So yeah, you have these wide open fairways, you have very little hazards off the tee that players have to deal with. So it's kind of bombs away. And then it pretty much boils down to, like we say a lot, a second shot course. And this is definitely a putting contest week. We're seeing 25 under par with ease. So kind of looking for players who can spike on these bent grass greens is going to be key this week.
Yeah, I think this is a great week for it, even though it's such a straightforward week in terms of what's required. I think this is a great week for the rabbit hole in particular. because you can really get into some of the filters that I think matter here. And when I was messing around with the model over the weekend, it's just a handful of things that I think matter more than most. And they're just kind of round robining them together, looking at easy scoring conditions, looking at long courses. Because even though, we've changed this a little bit, it's still stretched out a little bit for a par 71, 7,400 yards. They're really just trying to beat you over the head with length as their course defense here. Looking at some situations where it is driver heavy, because there is really nothing preventing you from just kind of gripping and ripping off the tee. And then on top of that, as you mentioned too, like there's really nothing rough wise that's like super penal. So low missed fairway penalty, something that we can capture here too. I think just those four in particular, obviously you have to score, so you need some scoring stats, but I was just messing around with combinations of those two and just seeing who pops and see, obviously there's some double counting in there too, but just to see the overlap and, who's really doing well in those stats.
Yeah, this is definitely a week for, for me personally, I'm targeting, weak field. This obviously, as we said, missing a lot of the good players here. Kind of, you'll see everybody back next week for the Wells Fargo signature event. So yeah, and it's interesting to know, when you hit these weak fields that are putting contests, you have kind of a certain subset of players who kind of typically, this is their week, and so. Occasionally being one of those. And so, yeah, going to be, good to dive in here and see kind of who we come up with using some of these filters.
Yeah, let's start and take a look here. And again, if you've seen this for the first time, this is a rabbit hole. It is officially PGA Tour license data that you can manipulate in ways that you have never, maybe wished you could have, if you're a nerd like us. And, now we can. So again, take advantage of it. Free week, sign up, betspertsgolf.com. Promo code free week. Check it out. All right, we'll go in and start to do this here and cut some stuff up. Let's back out a little bit. We'll go for a little longer sample size because we're going to start to filter some stuff here and talked about some of these key conditions here. I think there's no way to classify this other than very easy, but I think, capturing easy here as well, give us an idea of these scenarios where we need to go very, very low. As you can see here, there is a plethora of options to filter by. You can get into, as we mentioned, we're on bent grass green surface this week from a putting standpoint. If you want to break down who's gaining on approach from Zoysia fairways, you can. Might be a noisy subset of data, but it is there for you if you ever possibly wanted to here as well. If you want to get into, architects, you want to get into, as you mentioned, driver heavy. This is a situation where there's nothing really preventing these guys from just driver off the tee, driver, because there's really no danger. And missing the fairway is not really problematic. You can get some of the details in Ron's preview as well. It's just birdie rate off the fairway is about as high as anywhere that we're getting on tour. So don't really worry about that. And wind is obviously the defense here. You want to get some down in Texas. We're going to get some windy conditions. You want to see who can perform in those scenarios. You can check that out here as well. So let's go back to the top. I think these are some of the key ones this week. Let's look at very easy scoring conditions. What do you want to say, Ron? You said you want to look at field strength too. You want to look at weak and very weak fields?
Yeah, I'm putting those in, and I'll probably have a category 2 this week in my model that I'll post on the Discord for all subscribers. This is the 8th longest course, so I'll definitely probably go to that long, very, very long course length as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think I always try to tell people to be very careful. I think maybe even a couple of these at a time is really good because you start to overfit, and then really what your sample of data is small, noisy. You got to go back too far where maybe it's not super relevant. And if you start to overfit, it gets really hard. Well, people kind of reach out sometimes and say, hey, I'm looking at very easy scoring conditions on very long courses and very weak fields and the last 12 months, and I'm getting there's nothing showing up. And it's like, well, you're starting to look at too many things. You want to kind of pinpoint and move around a little bit versus just kind of overfitting too many conditions in one search. So let's look at this though. I think we'll get something here. Very easy scoring conditions in weak fields. Maybe back out the sample a little bit though. We're 2 years, and look, 2 years we're getting around 80 rounds for these guys for the most part. Let's see. And we're getting a fairly large sample for most. So you can see here, these are the rounds played. You can look at all the strokes gain data here, and you can tell what the conditions are right up here on the top as well. You can see some smaller samples if you want to mess around and just kind of filter out any small sample noise, put a minimum round feature on that too, you can do so. In the scenario over the last 2 years, Tom Kim, top of the board, Steven Yeager, Sanjay M, Seamus Powers, who played really well here and is starting to play better golf, Taylor Montgomery, Tom Hoagie, Mark Hubbard, Jason Day, your defending champ, Bo Hostler, Alex Smalley is your top 10, and strokes gained total in these conditions over the last 2 years. We'll add this to our model for the sake of the show. We'll build one here this morning. We'll go easy scoring conditions, weak fields. And again, you don't have to make a note here. This is just for your own sake. When you get to the next page and you got a bunch of strokes gained total because you did a bunch of filtering, you'll want to have some sort of note on what that is. Let's reset that. We'll go back and let's do something similar. We messed around with easy scoring. Let's take a look at long and very long courses. And let's look at scenarios where we are. Let's just do this. We'll look at long, very long in easy scoring conditions again. Let's see. Let's see if we get some overlap and see if we get something unique here. We'll back out. So again, we're only 6 months. So I'm going to back out a little bit longer. Let's go 18 months this time. I'll go even a little bit longer, see if we get a better sample of rounds played. You can see these all rounds here, the slide bar in conjunction with the time frame. You can mess around with the sample size to get you a better data set that makes some sense. Let's see. All right. So very easy and easy scoring conditions on long courses over the last 2 years. Patrick Rogers at the top of the board, Cam Champ, Bo Hostler again, Steven Yeager again, Carson Young performed well here last year. Tom Hoagie also in this mix. Ryan Palmer has a decent course history as well. Brandon Wu, Doug Gim, Matt Kuchar round out your top 10 there. Some of the names just off the cuff that were in the previous search. Let's take a look at this. We'll add this to our model. We'll go easy and long. We'll add that. Oop, I forgot to share my presentation. I closed it down. All right, we added that to our model here. So with the two things in there, we'll do it again. I think we need to look at, as I mentioned, driver heavy run, low fairway penalty. Any thoughts there? Anything we need to do maybe a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, off the tee, I think you got it perfectly so far. I'm probably going to emphasize approach much more in my model than off the tee this week.
For sure.
Really, the only area on this course that plays tougher than average PGA Tour course is proximity from the fairway. So not necessarily greens regulation percentage. So that for me just means that I'm going to definitely prioritize. One thing we can look at is from the fairway proximity over 200 yards. You have six par fours this week that are over 465 yards, and then you have 3 par fives. All three are very reachable, but still guys are going to be hitting their second shot to the green from that same 200 plus yard range. So that's going to be a big emphasis for me this week, is kind of narrowing down that 200 plus range from the fairway.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a little bit, again, that's what they're trying to do here, right? That's their defense, is hopefully the wind kicks up and they just kind of beat you over the head with some length. But looking at this here, driver heavy, missed fairway penalty low from a strokes gained tee to green standpoint. You're kind of getting the top of the board a little bit. Zalatoris and Jordan Spieth, Steven Yeager there again, Aaron Rye, Benny Ann, Troy Merritt making an appearance. Toasties had, look, some of the spots where Toasties played really well have been some spots where length has mattered quite a bit. Siwoo Kim, CT Pan, Davis Riley rounding out your top 10 here. I'm going to add this here, and then we'll go look at some approach stuff. So driver heavy and low missed fairway. All right. So we'll reset that. Let's look at approach. At this time of year, I like to do a few things approach-wise because we have a decent growing sample. And this has been a place where I think, form can matter quite a bit too. You can look at just here. Let's just look at 2024. We can apply, and we'll look at strokes gained approach. So in the sample of rounds played so far this season. You get, a mix of guys around, 30 to almost 50 rounds. These are your top in strokes gained approach. Hoagie, Keith Mitchell, Andrew Novak, Zalatoris, Ryan Moore, Joel Damon, Jake Knapp, Grayson Sigg, Siwoo Kim, and Mark Hubbard are your guys on approach. You can mess around with samples. Obviously, you can look at the different splits that Ron's talking about. You want to go into proximity from these ranges. You can go fairway approach. Look at fairway approach from 200 plus in this sample. You can see if, some new names for sure. Cody Gribble, Jimmy Walker, Bobby Mack, Paul Barjon, Patrick Fishburne made an appearance on our leaderboard there on over the weekend at Zurich. Kevin Yu. We was it? I'm going to butcher that name. But Doe was in. He fared well here last year, right? I believe he was in the top 20 or top 10 or so. He was in the mix. Patton Kazire, Kevin Daughtry, who can hit it far, and Tom Hoagie again as well. So interesting mix there. I'll go back and I want to add some approach stuff too. But what I was saying, the top two I like to do is start to look at different samples. So you want to look at who's playing really well right now. Let's look at the last 12 rounds. Let's look at a little bit longer. Let's look at 24 rounds. Then let's back it out a little bit. Let's go maybe 36, maybe 50 rounds. So we get a larger like baseline sample. You just weigh them different. How do you approach once we get in season a little bit more? We have a little bit more like recent form approach because it's so key in this week in particular.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think looking last 12 rounds, there's times I'll even go last 8 rounds just to see, like, because that's the part of your game that, like, if you're hitting it, if you're strapping it with your irons, that's the thing that's going to carry over more often than not to the next week. And so, yeah, for me, I'll break it down like that, kind of a rolling model almost. And what I do is, kind of combine those together, which, in the rabbit hole, you would just, add them numerous times and just give them different weights. So I think recent approach play, especially a week like this, where you're looking for guys who, that's the key thing here. You have to put yourself in position to make birdies. And so approach play is going to be heavily weighted for me. And I'll take a look at, and I will have time for this probably at the end, but to go through the floor ceiling filter and look at, spike putting, because, spike putting, who can spike on these greens this week, that could hold the key to victory.
Yep. That's a good call. Definitely a good week for that too. And maybe spiked approach too, I think can matter, who can gain and get real hot, because it's going to matter here as well. So yeah, some guys we've seen here doing some other searches are populating your top 10. Again, like modeling is using this, I think, is very easy, but modeling in general, even the term, can be a little bit, it's scary to people. It's a little bit intimidating, trying to make this really easy for you. So again, hopefully this video helps. There's the tutorial on the site. If you ever want to reach out to us directly on Twitter or via Discord, definitely can help you walk through it. And again, you can access all of our models. You want to see what we build and what we're weighing that week. You can see what Ron and I are doing. Matt Vicenzi, Tap It In podcast, Andy Lack from Inside Golf Podcast. You can find their models as well and see, hey, what stats are they adding that I'm not adding and that I want to maybe take a look at. Maybe there's a corollary course or something that they're looking at. The access to all this data is really helpful to hopefully, kind of that old school, teach a man to fish scenario where we're not trying to give you necessarily the answers to the test. We want to help you kind of come along and find a way to build your player pools for DFS and for betting cards as well. All right. Short-term approach here. Keith Mitchell at the very top. I'll add this. And again, just for, sake of time, we'll do just a couple other things here. Do last 12 approach. I would typically build out a model and do more buckets of approach, but to the sake of the show, we'll keep it a little bit tighter. I want to look here, Ron, at the floor ceiling, and let's look at these, the putting splits in particular. This is a really, really cool tool that allows you to look at, we talk about how spiked putting weeks in particular, spiked weeks in general. This is data backing that up. So how often does that actually happen? And you can look at this data through any split. So do you want to look at just putting in general? Do you want to put a bent grass split on it? How do you want to approach it this week?
You definitely could go in general. Like one thing that, some people may not be aware of is, so when you look at the different green types, bent grass is kind of one of the smoothest surfaces. And so Poa trivialis is very similar in that way. So you could combine, because there have been so many recent tournaments played on Poetriv, that what I'll do is I'll combine Bentgrass and Poetriv together just to get a better sample, because they both play very similar. They're both, like I said, two of the smoothest surfaces. So I'll put those two together. Look at, it's hard to, with some of these guys, you're not going to see, 3, 4. But if I see ball strikers who are, popping, like Tom Hoagie has really turned it on with the flat stick lately. If I see those guys, gaining 2 strokes, that for me is enough of a ceiling to jump on somebody. So that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Like it. So this gives you a sense of how often guys are, flat to the field, basically putting wise. But then you can go all the way up to multiple strokes gained. How frequently are they actually, gaining and separating themselves from the field? So some solid putters, and you could see some names as you kind of go over, see who can really put together the spiked putting weeks. You're getting up here to 2+ strokes on the green versus the field. And this is in a last 50 rounds sample. Again, you can mess around. Not everyone's meeting the 50 round requirements. As you can see with Hayden Springer here, I did not put a minimum round feature on, but you can do that as well. And you can go into the condition section, add the services that Ron's talking about. You want to add Poetriv, you want to look at Bent, and you can see what this data looks like under that condition as well, which is really cool. So we back out here. Let's see, what are we getting? Anyone that's different? Alexander Bjork still really good. Let's see if we get into adding up there. All right. Peter Cust last year was got hot, and he can hit it pretty far. Pretty small sample though. Bjork's as well. Adam Scott, Taylor Montgomery, Chandler Phillips, Jason Day. Again, your defending champ. Sami Valimaki gaining decent amounts. Let's get into really separating yourself, where you can get into a situation where we're really noticing. And again, small samples of the guys up top, but Adam Scott, Sam Ryder, gaining 2 or more strokes putting over a quarter of the time, which is a pretty nice number there. Again, smaller samples, you can again choose to filter that out if you would like, but definitely something that you should pop your head in here and take a look this week. We need a score, Ron. We need birdies and bunches. How do you want to approach your scoring metrics this week?
So definitely birdie better percentage. And, you don't have to do this, but something I'll do on the side as well is I'll put the easy scoring condition filter on, and I'll look at, what's a guy's birdie rate when it's easy scoring conditions? Because some guys like a Will Zalatoris, for some reason, when we get into these easy events, he just, it's hard for him to keep up for whatever reason. And so, that allows you to kind of see, okay, when it's a birdie fest, who are the guys who are really playing well in those types of events. And so I think it's really important to kind of weed out some of these tougher, fields, that, a guy like Jason Day has played in a bunch of strong fields lately and with tough scoring conditions. And so, looking at it from this perspective kind of lets you see, who kind of pops in these specific conditions they're going to see this week.
Yeah, this is your list of birdie or better over the last 50 rounds, and very easy scoring conditions. Jordan Spieth at the top, Ben An, Taylor Montgomery, Sanjay M, Stephen Yeager, Chan Kim, smaller sample, Tom Kim, Jason Day, Peter Kust, and Adam Scott are your top 10 there. Some other names that we've seen and some other splits not too far off the pace. And again, I think looking at this from an inverse standpoint matters too. I'd be very careful with the small sample guys, pull them out here as much as possible, so you don't punish them for only a couple of rounds. But who really struggles in these scenarios? You can see here, Kiz, Sned, Ryan Brem, who played some good golf this weekend, Paul Barjan, Zach Johnson, Sung Kang. Like, these are some guys that maybe when matchups pop, you want to go and take a look at too, or guys maybe you want to be really cautious of when you're building DFS lineups like that. It's just, again, you can mess around with the sample here as well. But I think whatever it is, I like to look at the bottom up as well, Ron.
Yeah, and here's another feature. If you go to the search box, like, this is another thing that I forget about sometimes. Type in like Zalatoris and see, just all you have to do is put in his first couple letters, and There you see. So he's higher than I thought he'd be. So he's 20th. But that's another good way if you want to look at specific players. You can star players, that little favorite column there, and you can kind of build your own, subsection. Like if you just wanted to look at the top 50 players in this field, you can just highlight them and you can compare and see, which ones stand out above others. So there's just so much flexibility, things that you can look at with the rabbit hole here.
Yep. No, that's a great call for sure. Yeah, that's Zal, that's higher than I would expect as well. Cause again, like I think you see the greats separate themselves when the conditions are hardest. These are all professional golfers at the end of the day. So these guys can score and take advantage. And sometimes like, Zalatoris doesn't mean he can't win a tournament like this. But when I'm looking at Zal, I'm thinking, all right, when are we going to get into like 8 to 12 under, right? That's when I want a Zalatoris typically versus, all right, when we're getting to 25, 26 under, it's not a spot where I typically would want to go to the well on Zal. It's harder for him to separate. So yeah, you want to be able to score, and we'll add this here to our model this week, birdie or better.
And another thing, if you're looking at scoring, like for this week, this is something I'll do. I'll go to, the par threes are the toughest grouping of holes here. So I'm not going to look at those, but you could very easily look at par 4 and par 5. And we have actual birdie or better percentage from those ranges. So not just, average scoring. But these par 4s are a way for players to separate themselves. And so, yeah, I'll look at, birdie or better percentage, on these holes as well.
Yep. Taylor Montgomery, Tom Hoagie, Ben On, Bo Hostler, Sanjay M, Garrick Higo, Chad Ramey. Nice weekend as well for both those guys. Jason Day, Sam Ryder, Thomas Dietrich. Again, some guys that were in the mix there on the team, no-name teams that were in the mix at the Zurich. Some of those names here as well. So yeah, definitely an interesting way to look at it. Again, scoring, you gotta go low this week. You gotta get it. So all right, perfect. What else? What else should we look at too? Again, distance doesn't, again, long course, but I think that when you look at the leaderboards in the past, it's not something that, I mean, it always helps, but it's not something that I'm going to weigh a ton this week. I think if anything, and I start to double count things when having all those like top of the board filtered by condition splits with, as we mentioned at the top, driver heavy, easy scoring conditions, long courses, some of that's capturing approach. And then I want to get into the approach buckets. You can get into the 200 plus, but again, more so like recent form, midterm form, long-term form. Those would be the things that I would be double counting this week. Would be our approach. I want to try to capture, recent form and long-term baseline form on approach. So let's run this for the folks. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to remind you too, if you're just hanging out with us, just jumped in, free week at Betsperts Golf, but you have to sign up. Use the promo code free week. Do it anytime before the tournament starts. And you will have a 7-day access to the site. So you can build your own models, see our models, read all the content, get in the Discord, see all the picks, all that stuff by signing up at Betsperts Golf using promo code free week. All right, let's see what we got here. You hit this little create mixed condition button, and we give this bad boy a name. We go first look. Craig Ranch. All right. You can see got the little weight in here for you as well. You don't have to do the math anymore. If you joined us in the past, we were doing the weight and the math in our head. You can see it save as many of these reports as you want. Go back to them, rerun them. Really, really cool feature. You can also, if dark mode's your thing, you can turn the dark mode on too and see what happens here. Now let's run this, Ron. Weights. For the sake of the show, I'm going to leave it here. But you can, again, mess around with, put as many columns as you want. This is, you can see, I put the description note-wise. You can click on the icon here, and it'll actually tell you, go back to look at any of the features that you actually put on here. But you can have that description in there as well. But let's just see what we get here. I'll save this so people can access it. So wait and see. I think we'll see some familiar names based off of guys that were populating there pretty commonly. Steven Yeager, Tom Hoagie, Mark Hubbard, Ben Ann. 4 names that I would have kind of expected to be up here. See Peter Coast and Nate Lashley, Will Zalatoris, Joel Damon, Ben Griffin, Aaron Rye, your top 10. Interesting to see too, once you get the DraftKings salaries here, you can search there as well, kind of to Ron's point. looking at groups of guys together, you get a sense of, based off of expected performance, DraftKings salary is going to resemble betting odds boards kind of to an extent. You can get a sense of, who's maybe a guy to avoid this week. And the easier way to separate maybe when you're looking at 1v1, 2v2s versus guys, an easy way for you to look at that too. And if you play on FanDuel, it's a search option for you as well. You can also download any of these into a CSV. You want to build a bunch of models, build it in Excel, slice and dice, and get real crazy with it too. You can do that as well here. So anyone surprise you or jump out to you, or what are your takeaways here with our top 10?
Yeah, there's some names like, Peter Quest is a guy who, if you look back over his last 12 rounds on the PGA Tour now, he's been stuck playing other events outside the tour recently, but he's gained the most strokes out of anyone in this field, like 1.93. And he was 14th here last year. So Seamus Power is another guy who, went through a really long period of struggling, kind of playing some good golf recently. And he's got now course history doesn't really mean a thing this week. It's one of the least predictive courses on tour for that, but he's got 3 top 20s here, and you combine that with his form, and he loves these kind of easy scoring events. And so he's another guy that sticks out for sure.
Interesting, guys. Minwoo Lee's been popular. I bet Minwoo Lee here last year. The approach game's been poor, very, very, very poor. And you're kind of seeing some of that capture here. I think, we only captured the last 12 rounds, but if you start to back it up, it doesn't get much better. In like even the last 36, last 24 for Minwoo Lee has not been great. Now, Minwoo Lee has not been necessarily a form guy. He gets a little bit hot and he starts rolling, but these, spike weeks, you're going to need one of those kind of out of nowhere here, especially for a guy that's sub 30 on the odds board here. Obviously, from just a baseline talent standpoint, Minwoo Lee doesn't belong in the mix of the guys on the screen, but you're kind of calling your shot on Minwoo Lee versus, you're not seeing it currently, I guess is what I'm saying. So he's been a popular discussion point early on in the week, and interesting to see kind of how that drifts out here.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, some of these guys you're not expecting, but yeah, I always like to see guys that I think are going to be popular. This gets easier when you have, again, the DraftKings salary in there as well. So, all right, good stuff as always, Ron. We appreciate it. Everyone needs to go to the site, read Ron's preview again, and you can read that this week because it is free. If you go over and sign up, you have to sign up. Use the promo code FreeWeek. Check it out. And take advantage. Build your own model. Get access to the model we just built. The actual models we're going to build for the research this week. I'll have a betting show on Tuesday with Andy. We'll have the DFS show with Ron and Byron on Wednesday. Kind of digging in back to standard fare here with individual stroke play, shot link data, all the bells and whistles that we like when we're betting on these events. So good stuff. Again, take advantage. If you have any questions, reach out to us directly on Twitter at Betsperts Golf, and we will help you get started. So for Ron, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.